I was called into the meeting room where HR waited with my boss. Rachel, after 15 years, we're terminating your role, he said coldly. Act your stuff before the end of the day. I smiled gently. I respect your decision. He had no idea I had just signed. The invitation came through Outlook at 9:03 a.m. meeting with HR and management. 9:30 a.m. conference room C. No subject line. No context. Just the kind of message that instantly makes your stomach drop. I have been with Ashford and Wells for 15 years. 15 years of early mornings, late nights, building systems from the ground up, mentoring new hires, and fixing messes no one else even noticed until they exploded. I'd missed birthdays, anniversaries, and even my mother's funeral because of this job. And yet, here I was, being summoned like a school kid to the principal's office. I didn't panic. Not because I wasn't nervous, I was, but because something inside me had changed in the past few months. Something quiet but powerful. As I walked toward conference room C, I passed the espresso machine I had campaigned to get installed. People still called it Rachel's coffee bar. I passed the wall where a framed article featured our product launch, a moment I had engineered behind the scenes while my boss Brian gave all the interviews. I paused just outside the door, inhaled slowly, and then stepped in. Brian sat at the head of the table, flanked by Karen from HR. Her face wore that perfectly practiced mask of corporate sympathy. Brian didn't even pretend. He leaned back in the chair, fingers steepled like a bad actor in a courtroom drama. Rachel, he said, voice dripping with rehearsed solemnity. After 15 years, the company has decided to terminate your position as part of our strategic realignment. Strategic realignment? I almost laughed. The same man who once called me irreplaceable was now using bullet points from a script. Karen slid a manila folder across the table. Inside you'll find the details of your severance package, she said. 2 weeks for every year of service, continuation of benefits for 60 days, and access to outplacement resources. I looked down at the folder, then back up at Brian. I respect your decision, I said gently. No protest, no begging, just calm acceptance. That alone seemed to knock the wind out of it. He blinked. We'll need you to pack your things by the end of the day, he added quickly, perhaps unsettled by my composure. And please return your laptop and badge to IT before 5 p.m. I stood, straightened my blazer, and nodded once. Of course. Thank you for the opportunity. I didn't linger. I didn't ask questions. I didn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me unravel. I walked out of that room with the same dignity I had carried for 15 years. What they didn't know, what they couldn't possibly suspect, was that 2 hours earlier, I had signed the lease for Ashford and Wells' main competitor's new downtown office. A firm I had quietly joined as head of strategic development 3 months ago. I had received a message on LinkedIn. A recruiter from Laneway Dynamics had written. We've been watching your work from afar, Rachel. Would you be open to a conversation? At first, I dismissed it. Loyalty had been my currency for years. But something had changed. Maybe it was Brian taking credit for my ideas one too many times. Maybe it was the junior exec he'd promoted, his golf buddy, despite my warnings that he lacked technical understanding. Maybe it was just exhaustion. Quiet, gnawing exhaustion from being invisible while others shined with my light. So I had taken the meeting. Then another. And another. By the time HR was preparing my termination letter, I had already negotiated a full executive package, equity shares, and the power to assemble my own team at Laneway Dynamics. This wasn't revenge. Not yet. This was insurance. I returned to my desk and sat quietly, scanning the office like it was already a memory. People were moving, typing, laughing. The world kept spinning, unaware that one of its axis points was about to shift. Hey, Olivia from accounting said softly, stopping by my desk. Are you okay? I smiled. Actually, I'm fine. Everything's going to be just fine. The box they gave me was too small. I left half my things behind, not because I didn't want them, but because I didn't need them anymore. At 4:58 p.m., I handed my badge to a young intern I didn't recognize. She looked startled. Are you leaving? Apparently, I said, offering a small smile. As I walked out of Ashford and Wells for the final time, the fall sun hit just right. Warm. Strong. Illuminating everything. I looked down at the folder still clutched in my hand, my name printed neatly across the top. Tomorrow, a new nameplate would be printed. Rachel Hayes, Head of Strategic Development, Laneway Dynamics. And Monday? Monday would be interesting. Monday arrived crisp and bright, the kind of autumn morning that feels symbolic, like the universe is offering a clean slate. I stood in front of the mirrored elevator doors in the sleek lobby of Laneway Dynamics downtown headquarters, adjusting the color of my navy blazer. No company badge yet, just a sense of calm anticipation, and something else. Freedom. As the elevator opened, our receptionist greeted me with a wide smile. Ms. Hayes, welcome. Mr. Caldwell is expecting you. That was Grant Caldwell, Laneway CEO, a man with a reputation for being ruthlessly brilliant, but also deeply loyal to those who earned his trust. We'd spoken privately several times over the past few months, our conversations candid and layered with mutual respect. I was escorted to the top floor, where a polished glass door bore a plaque that read, Head of Strategic Development, Rachel Hayes. My name. No one else's. No fine print. Grant stood as I entered his office, hand extended. Rachel, you have no idea how glad I am that you're finally here. Thank you for believing in me, I replied. Especially before anyone else did, he smiled. Oh, I didn't just believe in you, I ran the numbers. Your work at Ashford and Wells drove a 19% increase in client retention over the past 5 years. We've been chasing that kind of traction for a decade. He walked me through the office layout, introduced me to my direct reports, and finally led me to the corner conference room, where a team of executives sat waiting. I was given a seat at the table, no hesitation, no sideways glances. The meeting began with a presentation on Laneway's upcoming expansion and my role in leading the strategy for client acquisitions, tech integration, and market positioning. And then, just as I started outlining my roadmap for the next quarter, Grant said something that made me pause. We've also cleared the budget for you to build your own team. We want people who share your vision, people you trust. That was the moment everything shifted. A door opened, not just metaphorically, but tangibly. I had spent 15 years at Ashford and Wells training bright minds, building talent, mentoring without recognition. And when it was time to make cuts, none of that mattered. But now, I had the power to change someone else's trajectory. To give back. Thank you, I said, carefully controlling my voice. I already have a few names in mind. That night, I opened my laptop and typed 6 emails, each one carefully written, respectful, and honest. Subject, a new chapter, let's talk. Each message went to someone I had mentored at Ashford and Wells, developers, analysts, strategists, people who were overlooked, passed over for promotions, or forced to work under managers who used their ideas as stepping stones. Within 30 minutes, I had 3 responses. By midnight, all 6. Yes, Rachel. Tell us where and when. On Tuesday, the fallout began. I was sipping coffee in the Laneway lounge when a notification pinged my phone, LinkedIn updates. 4 of my former team members had changed their job status to open to work. The timing wasn't subtle. Neither were the private messages that followed. Brian just called a meeting asking why half the strategy team was suddenly updating their resumes. Karen from HR stopped by my desk and asked if I'd spoken to you. I didn't answer. Rumor is they're scrambling to reshuffle teams after losing momentum post Q3 review. I didn't reply to every message, but I read each one twice. Meanwhile at Laneway, I began working with our legal and compliance department to finalize contracts for my new hires, competitive pay, flexible hours, and most importantly, ownership. I made sure each of them would have their names attached to what they built. By Wednesday, Grant pulled me aside. We just had a client reach out, one we lost to Ashford and Wells last year. They want to reopen discussions. I raised an eyebrow. Any idea why? Not sure, he said, smiling slightly. But they asked if Rachel Hayes would be leading the project. That evening, I received an unexpected text from Brian. Hey, heard you landed somewhere. Congrats. Can we talk? I stared at the message for a long moment. There was no apology, no acknowledgement of what he'd done, just a casual attempt to reconnect now that the power balance had shifted. I didn't reply. Instead, I poured a glass of wine and opened the group chat I'd created. With my soon-to-be team, we joked, shared old office stories, and reviewed our plans for the new product line. And then Olivia, the quietest of the group, wrote, Rachel, you don't know what this means to us. You believed in us before we believed in ourselves. I'm in 100%. I felt something tighten in my chest, not pain, relief. After years of watching others take credit, of being sidelined and minimized, I was finally in a place where my voice mattered. And more importantly, I could make sure theirs did too. This wasn't about revenge. It was about rebuilding, with the right people, in the right way. And as for Brian, well, he just started to realize what happens when you fire the wrong person. By the end of my first week at Laneway Dynamics, the atmosphere at Ashford and Wells was beginning to shift, and not in the way their leadership had hoped. The first signs came in the form of silence, the kind that settles over a workplace when people are too afraid to ask questions out loud but are whispering them behind closed doors. On Monday morning, I received a message from Jordan, my former data systems analyst. They'd pulled everyone into a reassurance meeting this morning. Brian tried to sound confident, but people could tell something was off. Someone asked where you were going and he dodged the question. By Tuesday, I had confirmation that 2 long-standing clients were reevaluating their contracts with Ashford. They'd reached out through a mutual contact, curious about whether I was involved in any current projects, and if not, why not? I didn't chase them. I didn't have to. The truth was, the work I'd done at Ashford wasn't just technical. It was relational. I had spent years building trust with clients, translating needs into solutions, and delivering under pressure. It turns out people remember that. And people talk. At Laneway, my new team was beginning to form. Olivia had officially accepted her offer and started onboarding. By Wednesday, 2 more had followed. It felt like assembling a dream team, not just based on skill, but on shared values. Every time someone joined, I felt that quiet satisfaction grow stronger. This wasn't just about proving I could land on my feet. It was about lifting others with me. Late that afternoon, as I was reviewing integration plans with the engineering lead, my phone buzzed again. Another LinkedIn notification. Brian had updated his job title, Chief Strategy Officer. I laughed out loud. There was no announcement, no formal press release, just a quiet little title change clearly meant to stabilize perception after my departure. But it reeked of panic. He was scrambling to fill a gap he didn't even fully understand until I was gone. That same night, I got a call from Claire, my old friend in the legal department at Ashford. She sounded hesitant at first, then blurted, "I'm sorry. I didn't know they were going to do that to you." I paused, surprised. "Claire, you don't owe me an apology. You weren't the one who made the decision." "I still feel responsible," she sighed. "They had meetings weeks before your termination. I wasn't looped in until the final HR review. But after seeing the fallout, Rachel, they're spiraling." "Because I left?" I asked. "Because they didn't see it coming," she said. "You were the one constant in a sea of turnover. Now Brian is holding meetings every morning and pushing unrealistic deadlines to prove everything is under control." I didn't say anything. Claire continued, her voice lower. "I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know, what you built there, it mattered." Those words stuck with me. By Thursday morning, I was sitting across from Grant in his office, reviewing updates on our first major product launch. The energy in the room was electric. "Early prototypes are outperforming expectations," he said, tapping the table. "We haven't even announced the official launch date, and we already have inbound interest from 2 firms in the financial sector." "That's because our message is clear," I replied. "Efficiency, transparency, and credibility. It's what clients want, and what they remember." He looked at me thoughtfully. "You know, Rachel, you've done more in 10 days than some executives manage in a year." I smiled, but the compliment brought with it a deeper realization. I hadn't changed, I'd just finally been seen. That afternoon, Olivia stopped by my new office with a coffee in hand, just the way I like it, black with a dash of cinnamon. "I still can't believe it," she said, looking around. "You're really the boss now." I laughed. "Well, technically Grant is the boss. I just sit in the corner." "No," she said softly. "You're the one we follow. You always were." The words caught me off guard. I thought back to the nights I stayed late fixing reports Brian had mangled, or the weekends I spent coaching junior analysts for presentations he'd take credit for. I'd wondered back then if it was all for nothing, but it wasn't. Because here I was, building something real. That evening, as I prepared to shut down for the night, I received another message from Claire. "You should know Brian just requested an emergency board session. Internal rumors say he's blaming structural gaps in strategy performance. Also, they've started reaching out to a recruitment firm for a replacement. He's worried." I stared at the screen for a moment, then typed a short reply. He should be. Because the dominoes had only just started to fall. By the following Monday, word had officially leaked. Ashford and Wells was in trouble, not the kind of scandalous, headline-grabbing trouble that made the news, but the slow internal unraveling that executives scramble to spin and employees whisper about over coffee. It started with missed deadlines, then client complaints, and then, worst of all for a company built on perception, silence from leadership. That morning, I was in a product strategy meeting at Laneway, laying out our second phase integration plan, when Olivia passed me a note across the table. "Ashford just pulled out of the Tech Forward conference. No announcement. Just gone." I blinked once and tucked the note into my folder. 3 weeks ago, Brian had been slated as a keynote speaker at that very event, a fact he reminded the team of every chance he got. And now, he'd gone completely dark. After the meeting, I stepped into the hallway for a call with Grant. Before I could speak, he jumped in. "You've stirred up more movement in the market than I expected," he said, with a mix of amusement and awe. 3 of Ashford's mid-tier clients reached out this morning. Wanting demos. Wanting you. "Let's not rush," I said carefully. "We'll talk to the ones that are serious. The rest can wait." He paused, clearly reading between the lines. "You're not doing this to beat Ashford, are you?" I smiled faintly. "Remember, I'm doing this to build something better. If that means their house of cards collapses along the way, so be it." That afternoon, I got another message. This time from Miguel, a junior developer who had been on the fence about leaving Ashford. "Rachel, I think I'm ready. Things are a mess here. They've split your old role between 2 execs, neither of whom understand the systems you designed. Yesterday they asked me to explain the entire project lifecycle in a 30-minute presentation. I've only been here 8 months. Are you still building your team?" I texted back instantly. "Yes. Let's meet." By Tuesday, Miguel was in my office, looking 10 years older than when I last saw him. "I'm not sure how I lasted this long," he admitted, sitting across from me. "It's like no one knows who's in charge anymore. Everything feels reactionary. Defensive." I nodded slowly, because that's what happens when leadership is built on control, not collaboration. The moment their system gets disrupted, it collapses. "I don't want to survive in that," he said quietly. "I want to thrive in something real." "You will," I said, sliding a contract toward him. "You're not just getting a job, you're getting a voice." His signature hit the paper with a kind of finality, like a thread snapping cleanly from one story to another. By midweek, the cracks at Ashford widened into chasms. A well-placed source forwarded me a company-wide email sent by Brian. "We are undergoing a restructuring phase to streamline operations and improve efficiency. We appreciate everyone's continued support during this time of growth and change." The language was pure corporate theater, but the meaning was clear. They were losing control. And fast. That night, over drinks with Grant and the CFO, we reviewed early projections for our Q1 performance. If even half of the leads we generated converted, Laneway would experience its strongest growth quarter in 5 years. Rachel, the CFO, said, lifting his glass, I think we finally found the missing link. It wasn't missing, I said, raising mine in return. It was just buried. The next morning, I woke to a voicemail from Claire. Her voice was tight. Serious. Call me? It's urgent. I called back immediately. She picked up on the first ring. Rachel, she said, it's happening. The board just held an emergency vote. They're removing Brian. I stood stunned, not because I didn't see it coming, but because it had happened faster than even I expected. They're naming an interim CEO, an external candidate. A full audit of leadership and strategy is underway. They're trying, faster than even I expected. They're naming an interim CEO, external candidate, and doing a full audit of leadership strategy. They're trying to salvage the ship before more talent walks. I didn't say anything at first. Just closed my eyes and breathed. They never expected this to turn into a movement, I said finally. No, she agreed. But you turned your exit into a blueprint, and now people are following it. That afternoon, Grant stepped into my office with a gleam in his eye. You've got a lunch meeting with one of Ashford's ex-clients tomorrow. Big one. They said they're not interested in rehashing the past, just interested in what you're building next. Good, I said, because the past doesn't deserve our time. As he left, I glanced at the new project roadmap pinned to my office wall. Clean lines, clear phases, a vision I had once tried to bring to Ashford, only to be told it was too ambitious, too complex, too much. Not anymore. Now it was reality. And Brian, he was learning the hard way that people are not replaceable. Influence isn't granted by title. It's earned through trust, through sweat, through showing up. He'd taken my seat at the table for years. Now I was building the whole damn table. By Friday morning, the call stopped being subtle. Rachel Hayes was no longer a rumor in the industry. She was a movement. Every day brought new messages, former clients, recruiters, industry peers, even strangers who'd watched from afar. Some wanted jobs. Others just wanted to say thank you. But the most surprising call came at 10:47 a.m. from a name I hadn't heard in years, Vanessa Carr. Vanessa was one of Ashford and Wells' top-tier clients, the CFO of a massive logistics conglomerate who'd quietly hinted more than once that I was the reason she stayed loyal to the company. Our last conversation, over 2 years ago, ended with a warning: if they ever let you go, I won't be far behind. Her voice now was cool, measured, but layered with something more. Rachel, she said, I've been watching the shifts at Ashford, your team at Laneway, the new platform. It's impressive. Thank you, I said cautiously. I didn't expect to hear from you. She hesitated. You know me. I don't move unless I have a reason. Here's mine. We're ending our contract with Ashford. I blinked. Seriously? They've lost direction. No leadership, no stability. The new interim CEO is a paper figure, and the board is in chaos. They even asked us to delay our quarterly review because they couldn't get the reporting tools to function properly. I could already guess what happened. The systems I'd built had been patched together without understanding. Once they broke, no one knew how to fix them. We're vetting new partners, Vanessa continued. But between us, I want to work with you. I leaned back in my chair, phone against my ear, staring out at the city skyline. I appreciate that, Vanessa. But I don't just take clients anymore. I choose partners, people who respect the value of long-term vision. I'm not asking for a discount, she said. I'm offering something bigger. Come in-house. Lead our transformation team. Executive-level autonomy. Equity stake. I froze. That wasn't a consulting gig, that was an empire. After the call, I sat in silence for a long moment, weighing the offer. Laneway had given me a platform, freedom, respect, and space to rebuild, but this was a whole different level of control. A chance to lead innovation outside of tech silos, to affect not just product, but culture. Still, walking away from Laneway so soon felt premature, especially with my team finally finding their footing. Olivia, Miguel, and they weren't just employees. They were people I'd helped restore, people who had trusted me. I wasn't ready to walk away from them, but I wasn't ready to dismiss Vanessa's offer either. That night, I met Grant for drinks. He greeted me at a quiet rooftop bar with a smirk that told me he already knew something was up. So, he said, swirling his drink, Vanessa Carr. I narrowed my eyes. How she called me. He said, told me she made you an offer. I raised an eyebrow. And I told her she's lucky you even picked up the phone, he said smoothly. But I also told her something else. If you ever wanted to lead a division outside of tech, finance, logistics, infrastructure, I'd back you with every dollar I've got. My stomach flipped. Grant. No, listen, he said. You rebuilt your life in weeks. You built hours with it. But I know talent like yours doesn't sit still for long. So if this is your next mountain, I won't stop you. I exhaled slowly. It's not about leaving. It's about building where I'm needed most. He nodded. And that's what makes you different from the Bryans of the world. The next morning, as I walked into the office, something struck me. There was a weight to every step now, not pressure, but presence. People stood when I entered. They asked for my input. They listened. Not because I demanded it, but because I'd earned it. Halfway through my day, Olivia pulled me into a side room. "Just so you know," she said with a grin, "Ashford sent another recruiter after Miguel. Same guy who ghosted me 3 years ago when I applied for an internal transfer." Miguel chuckled from the doorway. Told them I was flattered, then forwarded the email to our group chat. "Nice touch," I said. "You should have seen Brian's face," he added. "He's still lurking in the background, not CEO anymore, but hanging on." That made me pause. Brian? He was still at Ashford. Just then, Claire sent me a message. Internal rumor: Brian's trying to position himself as head of innovation to justify staying. No one's biting, but watch your back. He's not done trying to salvage his reputation. I stared at the message, then typed back. He can try. I've got something he'll never understand, a team that follows me willingly, and a future that doesn't need fixing. Because in a few days, Ashford would discover something they weren't prepared for. Their competitor wasn't just hiring. We were expanding. 3 months after I walked out of Ashford and Wells with a cardboard box and a polite smile, I walked into Laneway's executive summit to the sound of a standing ovation. Not because of a speech, not because of a press release, but because the new product we launched had just landed our company a multi-million-dollar deal. What Ashford had been chasing for years. We didn't win it with flash. We won it with functionality, with real solutions delivered by a team that had been discarded, underestimated, and ignored. The same team now leading one of the fastest-growing development divisions in the industry. But I didn't need applause. I needed impact, and we were just getting started. Earlier that week, the final domino had fallen. Vanessa Carr had called again, only this time, not with another job offer. This time, she called to confirm. "We've moved all systems to your team," she said. The transition was seamless. Honestly, I wish we'd done it sooner. I thanked her, and she paused before continuing. "There's something else," she said carefully. "Brian reached out to us personally." I didn't speak. I just let her go on. "He offered to consult. Said he could bring unique insights into your process since he worked closely with you for so many years." Her voice dripped with irony. I laughed softly. "Let me guess, he phrased it like we were partners." "Exactly," she said. "But I told him the truth. The only thing he ever contributed was obstruction. And frankly, we're not interested in people who build roadblocks and call them strategy." She hung up with a promise to introduce us to 2 more logistics clients by quarter end. I sat in silence for a moment after the call, letting it all sink in. Brian wasn't just irrelevant now. He was a cautionary tale, a man who built his empire on the backs of others and then had no idea how to hold it together once those people walked away. And the irony? He could have been a mentor, a leader. Instead, he'd chosen control, and now no one was listening to him. That Friday, we held our first joint strategy retreat. Not in a sterile boardroom, but at a converted farmhouse an hour outside the city. Sunlight streaming through high windows, whiteboards leaning against brick walls, post-it notes scattered across rustic tables, the kind of place that invites ideas instead of suffocating them. As we reviewed the upcoming quarter's roadmap, I looked around the room. Miguel was guiding a new intern through our automation workflows. Olivia was fielding client calls with a confidence I hadn't seen in her before. Even Claire, who had finally left Ashford for a senior compliance role with us, was smiling in a way she hadn't in years. At one point, someone asked what we should name the new project. I looked at the whiteboard and quietly wrote, "Fix." Because that's what we'd done. We'd risen on our own terms. That evening, I got an email. No name in the subject line. Just, "We made a mistake. I made a mistake." It was Brian. "Rachel, I'm not asking for sympathy. I just need you to understand that I was under pressure. The board, the investors, the metrics, they pushed, and I reacted. I see now what I failed to recognize back then. Your work was the foundation of everything we did. And when you left, it all started to collapse. I've lost almost everything, and I can't help wondering what would have happened if I just treated you differently. I hope you're doing well. I'm truly sorry." There was a time I would have clung to that apology, turned it over in my mind, hoping it might heal something. But not anymore. Because I didn't need closure from him, I had given it to myself. I closed the email and never responded. A few days later, Laneway announced a new internal initiative, the Rachel Hayes Fellowship, an annual program to fund and mentor women in tech who had been pushed out of corporate roles and wanted to start over. The board had voted unanimously. Grant had insisted it carry my name. I was stunned. "You built this, Rachel," he said. "Not just the systems, the people, the culture. You showed us what leadership actually looks like." For a moment, I didn't know what to say. So I just nodded, not out of modesty, but because it felt right. 1 year after I was terminated without warning, I stood in my office, no longer surrounded by silence, but by movement. Real momentum. A new generation of thinkers and builders who didn't ask for permission to be brilliant. As I looked out over the city, one last message came in from Miguel. "Hey boss, client just confirmed. They're leaving Ashford and coming to us. That makes 8. Also, we're going to need a bigger office. I smiled, heart full. No bitterness in sight. Because revenge fades, but legacy lasts.